The phone slid from my hand and kissed the office floor with a brittle, decisive crack. The screen, a spiderweb of light, still showed the single sentence that rearranged 23 years of my life. Your $4.5 million pension has been terminated. No greeting, no signature. Just an execution carried out by email 48 hours before payout, as clean and bloodless as an accountant's eraser. Outside my corner windows, the Hudson shrugged awake beneath a slate November sky. Inside, the familiar quiet of 6:30 a.m. hummed with the elevator's soft chime and the memory of a security guard's nod. I had built my mornings on ritual, risk reports before sunrise, espresso at 6:45, a walk through exposure tables at 7 o'clock. At 7:02, the ritual detonated. The subject line, "Notice of Benefit Suspension," cut through my inbox like a scalpel. I read the single sentence 3 times. My hands didn't shake. They did what they have always done in catastrophe. They became so still it felt like the room had frozen around them. Stillness is not shock. It is calculation. A small detail in the CC line winked like a lighthouse in a storm. osh@sec.gov. Someone had copied federal regulators on a supposedly routine HR notice. A glitch, they'd say later. The kind of glitch that only appears when someone wants an audit trail made permanent. The cracked phone still worked. I called the only lawyer who knows both my thresholds and my temper. "Rebecca," I said when she answered on the second ring, "they terminated my pension 2 days before payout." The long 3 seconds of Rebecca Stone is a measure of catastrophe. "Forward me everything," she said. "Don't respond to anyone. Don't sign anything. Can you come at noon?" "I've got a 9:30 with HR." "Record it. New York's one-party consent. And Isabella, document every keystroke. Times, dates, names. Data is ammunition." After the call, I let the city fill the windows. Barges nosing south, a ferry stitching New Jersey to Manhattan, with white thread, clouds massing in layered grays. 23 years unwound through my mind like ticker tape. My 20s drowned in Tokyo's fluorescence while I structured credit swaps. My 30s siloed in conference rooms that smelled of dry erase markers and cold Szechuan. My 40s arranged around triage. I missed Sarah's first steps because a counterparty needed reassurance at 3 a.m. I ate our 10th anniversary dinner from a cardboard clamshell under fluorescent light while a margin call stalked us. When the crisis came in 2008, it took everything except my capacity to solve. September 16th. Lehman dead, markets feral, monitors hemorrhaging red. Men who wore invulnerability like cologne sat with their heads in their hands. Marcus Whitfield, then a senior vice president with a talent for cameras and a gift for taking credit, gripped my arms hard enough to bruise. "Morgan, you're the only one who actually understands these derivatives. If we don't have a solution by market open, we're finished." I worked for 96 hours, not the humble brag, barely slept, but the frightening, espresso-fueled, time-losing kind, building hedges, calming creditors, writing risk models so clean the Fed's economist asked to teach them at Princeton. Marcus got a $50 million bonus and a magazine cover. I got a plaque that caught dust in the HR hallway. And, more importantly, authority to rewrite governance while everyone stared at survival. A soft knock cracked the memory. Sarah, already in her Riverside Prep blazer, hovered in the doorway with that teenage clairvoyance that reads weather in a parent's face. "Mom, you didn't come down for breakfast." "Just a work thing," I said too quickly. I'd taught her efficiency and privacy like they were virtues. She's learned not to push when the air turns metallic. When she left, I opened a new document and began time-stamping the morning. 7:02 email received. 7:05 voicemail to Rebecca. 7:08 call connected, copying headers, preserving metadata, uploading screenshots to 2 encrypted drives, and a cold backup. I gave the email an evidence label. Risk management teaches you that memory is untrustworthy, but a log is law. At 9:25, the camera indicator on my laptop glowed. I adjusted the angle until the skyline framed my shoulder, tested the recording software twice, and opened the video link. Jason Miller from HR materialized, mid-30s, perfect teeth, tie knotted by someone who believes symmetry equals sincerity. "Isabella, thank you for making time," he said, voice lacquered with empathy. "I want to assure you this decision wasn't made lightly." "Which decision specifically?" I asked. "The temporary suspension of certain legacy pension obligations as part of a broader cash flow optimization strategy. Some consultant billed 6 figures for those 4 words. Cash flow optimization." "I see," I said. "And this optimization requires no notice, no board approval?" "Market conditions demanded swift action. I'm sure someone with your experience understands that difficult decisions are sometimes necessary for the greater good." The greater good. They always reach for the same fig leaves. "Please send all documentation related to this decision," I said. "Board minutes, legal review, financial projections. I'm sure someone in your position understands the importance of transparency." A hairline crack formed in his smile. "Of course, by end of day." "We both know that isn't happening," I said evenly. "But I'll note your commitment." I let a breath pass. "One more question, Jason. Why was the Securities and Exchange Commission copied on my termination notice?" He blinked. "That must be a technical glitch. Our email system accidentally adds federal regulators to internal HR messages," I finished. "Please ensure your investigation is thorough. The SEC can be curious about glitches involving pension funds." I ended the call before he could look for a script. The recording saved in triplicate. A written request for documents went out with the kind of formal politeness that reads like a subpoena waiting to happen. I watched the sent confirmation land in my outbox and felt the steadiness return, a pressure front moving through. Most people think the important thing about a storm is where the lightning strikes. They're wrong. The important thing is the pressure, the way a room tells you what's coming. The air in my office now had that pre-storm density. Someone in compliance had CC'd the SEC for a reason. Either they were raising a flag, or they were covering themselves, or both. Either way, it meant the ground under Marcus's marble floor was less stable than the interior decorating suggested. My phone buzzed with a text from David, my husband, emergency physician, connoisseur of long nights and bad coffee. "Heard anything I should worry about? Lunch if you can." I typed back, "Not yet, building a record." The reply came quickly. "Proud of you. Don't flinch." David treats decisions like traumas. Clear airway, stop the bleed, stabilize. He knows how I breathe when I'm choosing a weapon. On my desk, among the binders and fountain pens and an acrylic paperweight Sarah made in middle school, sat a gray archival box labeled in my handwriting, "Post-Crisis Docs." I didn't open it, not yet. Preparation is not the same as use. And I still wanted to see if Jason would send anything resembling a legal review. Sometimes people are foolish enough to memorialize their worst decisions. I did, however, log the box's presence in my notes and photograph the label with a timestamp. Belt, suspenders, and steel cable. The morning walked forward in small, practical steps. I filed a request with IT for audit logs of any changes to my benefits profile in the last 30 days. I pulled the last 3 years of 10K footnotes on deferred compensation and made margin notes where the language had migrated. Little edits that tell you a story if you read them like a palimpsest. I drafted a courtesy email to our general counsel requesting an explanation for the sudden suspension and CC'd it to the board's independent Schrechter. I used the phrase fiduciary duty twice in 2 sentences and did not apologize. At 10:41, Sarah texted from school. "Bloomberg alert about Vertex volatility. Are you okay?" I thumbed back. "Yes, focus on chemistry. I've got mine." She sent a heart, then a molecule emoji. She's learned the grammar of my reassurances. By 11:10, Jason had not sent anything, which was a kind of answer. By 11:45, Rebecca messaged, "My office, noon. Bring the paper trail and the gray box if your instincts say so." My instincts had stopped whispering and started tapping the glass. I stood, smoothed the navy dress I keep for days that require authority without spectacle, and looked once more at the email that began all this. Language matters. So does silence. The missing salutation, the absence of explanation, the presence of @sec.gov, 2 days before payout. If you wanted to provoke someone into action that would surface buried things, you could hardly design a better trigger. The elevator ride down was quiet, a long stainless steel mirror that reflected a woman I recognized. Tired around the eyes, posture straight as a surveyor's rod, expression neutral, the way surgeons keep their faces when the OR goes sideways. In the lobby, Robert the guard looked up from his console. "Ms. Morgan," he said, voice warm. "Everything all right?" "It will be," I said. Not hope, not bravado. A forecast drawn from pressure readings. Outside, the wind off the river had sharpened. I crossed the plaza with my bag heavier than it looked, my notes in order, my recorder charged, my next moves stacked like checkmates I'd spent a decade and a half practicing in my head. There is a moment in every long game when patience ends and execution begins. I could feel that hinge in the day, its sound as distinct as glass cracking on a marble floor. I did not yet open the gray box, but as I stepped into the cab and gave the driver an address in the Chrysler Building, I already knew what I would find when I did. Not a weapon born of spite, but a safeguard drafted in a blackout when the grid failed and the city learned to speak to itself in candles. In that darkness, I had written something that assumed men like Marcus would keep believing rules were for other people. I had hoped it would never be needed. I had also very carefully made sure it would work. At a red light on Lexington, my phone buzzed again, an automated ping from a system I'd set years earlier that watches for unusual access to my HR profile. Someone had opened it. Another ping, a failed attempt to modify a beneficiary field. Someone was clumsy, or hurried, or both. "Faster, please," I told the driver. The light turned, the cab surged, the day tilted. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a storm I could wait out. It was a storm I had to walk into. I tightened my grip on the gray box. The lid was still closed, the seal unbroken. The city beyond the windshield glittered like 1,000 signatures, waiting to matter. The Chrysler Building rose like a cathedral of steel and ambition, its spire piercing the gray midday sky. The lobby, polished to a mirror sheen, whispered of permanence, an illusion New York sells better than any other city. Rebecca's office sat high above the street, a conference room paneled in mahogany, the kind of room where fortunes are salvaged or buried. She was already waiting, dark hair pulled back, glasses perched low on her nose, scanning the documents I had forwarded. She didn't waste words. "Show me." I slid the gray archival box across the table. She watched as I broke the old tape, hands steady, as though muscle memory had been waiting 15 years for this gesture. Inside, wrapped in careful layers of red legal tape, lay Amendment 7 to Vertex Capital's corporate bylaws. The title page still smelled faintly of toner and the stale air of 2009, when the world was cracking apart. "Page 47, I said. She leaned forward as I turned the pages, my handwriting marking the margins like a younger ghost of myself. Marcus Whitfield's initials, M.W., appeared at the bottom of each page, bold strokes that once felt like signatures of security, but now looked like fingerprints on a crime scene. And then, nestled between the dull language of audit requirements and fiscal definitions, there it was, Section 17.3.2, Pension Security and Equity Conversion Rights. Rebecca read in silence, lips moving faintly as she parsed the words. She stopped halfway through, eyes snapping up. "Isabella, this is nuclear." And the clause had been my insurance policy, drafted in the sleepless crucible of the 2008 crisis when loyalty felt like a gamble and survival meant writing your own rules. Its language was clinical, but its effect was merciless. In the event that any deferred compensation or pension obligation once contractually committed and vested is unilaterally revoked, suspended, or terminated by the corporation, without the express written consent of the beneficiary, an automatic equity conversion shall be triggered. The affected party shall receive, via immediate transfer from the corporate reserve pool held in escrow by Meridian Trust, voting shares equivalent to 12% of outstanding common stock. And the kicker, hidden in the dense folds of subsection B, any executive who authorized such revocation would become personally liable for all corporate debt secured by personal guarantee. Marcus had signed it. He hadn't just signed the last page, he'd initialed each one, including 47, his flourish bold as ever. Rebecca exhaled slowly, like someone testing the weight of dynamite. "If you file this, you don't just get your pension back. You become the largest individual shareholder, and Marcus becomes personally liable for the credit line." She nodded grimly. "Silverstone Financial will come after him within hours. His townhouse, the Hamptons place, the Aspen retreat, even the yacht he brags about." I remembered the night he pledged them, proud of his collateral, boasting that it showed faith in the firm. Faith. Marcus had always wrapped greed in piety. "They'll fight this," Rebecca warned. "You know that." "They can try," I said, but it was properly ratified. Meridian Trust holds the reserve shares. Once I notify them, the conversion executes automatically. The board doesn't even get a say. Rebecca studied me for a long moment. "You've been waiting for this." I shook my head. "Not waiting, preparing. There's a difference." The memory of 2008 unspooled again. Marcus in shirt sleeves, shouting at panicked traders, then turning to me with desperation masked as authority. "Morgan, you fix this." And I did. 96 hours of equations scrawled across whiteboards, phone calls to creditors who trusted my voice more than any executive's promises. The company survived. Marcus got his empire, and I got the freedom to slip one clause into the bylaws that no one bothered to read too carefully, because everyone assumed I was loyal. Trust is a currency more volatile than any derivative. I had banked it. And now, Marcus's trust, his laziness, his arrogance was about to pay out. Rebecca's pen tapped against the table, sharp staccato. "What's your move?" "Document everything. File with Meridian before 5. Trigger the clause." She nodded. "Then you need to prepare for war. Marcus will paint this as betrayal. He'll call you disloyal, vindictive. He'll call me dangerous." And he would be right. For years, Marcus Whitfield cultivated an image, the visionary CEO, the survivor of 2008, the man with marble floors under his feet and glossy profiles in fortune. But behind the image was rot, lavish bonuses while support staff were cut, pension contributions slashed for everyone below VP. He believed consequences were for other people. That was why, when he scrawled his initials on page 47, he hadn't even paused. He trusted me to protect his empire. He never imagined I might build a safeguard for myself. Rebecca slid the document back to me, eyes sharp. "If you pull this trigger, there's no unpulling it." I thought of Sarah, 16, bright-eyed and sharper than she knew, asking over breakfast why I hadn't eaten. I thought of David, steady hands in an ER at 2 a.m., reminding me that survival isn't about winning every battle. It's about choosing the ones you can't afford to lose. "They thought I'd accept this quietly," I said. "Maybe threaten, maybe sue. They don't know about page 47. Rebecca leaned back, a smile flickering at the edge of her mouth, half admiration, half disbelief. Then let's give them a reason to read what they sign. The afternoon stretched ahead, heavy with the weight of what was coming. Outside, the city throbbed with its usual noise: horns, footsteps, ambition disguised as urgency. But inside that conference room, beneath the Art Deco crown of the Chrysler Building, a different kind of storm gathered. I traced my fingers once more over the words I had written 15 years earlier in the blackout silence after Lehman fell, when New York had been lit by candles and fear. Every clause, every comma was a lifeline disguised as legalese, not spite, not revenge, insurance. And the policy was about to mature. That night, sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, not out of fear, but out of vigilance. My home office became a command center. 3 monitors humming, Meridian Trust's portal glowing on one screen, Vertex's after-hours trading data scrolling on another, and a cascade of financial news feeds filling the third. At 2:15 a.m., the first domino tipped. An automated email arrived. Transfer initiated. Equity conversion per Amendment 7, Section 17.3.2. At 3:47 a.m., the second. Corporate reserve shares allocated, awaiting final verification. By 5:23 a.m., the killing blow landed. Transfer complete. 12.06% of Vertex Capital common shares registered to Isabella E. Morgan. Voting rights active immediately. The numbers were staggering on paper, $384 million at current valuation. But wealth was not the point. Leverage was. Overnight, I had gone from a discarded employee to the largest individual shareholder in the firm I had bled for. The irony was exquisite. Marcus's arrogance had weaponized my loyalty. He thought I was bound by trust. He had forgotten that trust, once broken, hardens into steel. Messages began to arrive before dawn, each one a crack in Marcus's fortress. Elena Rodriguez, the former board chair Marcus had forced out. I saw the filing. I'm with you. Thomas Washington, CFO turned ghost in Marcus's regime. About time someone held him accountable. You have my support. By sunrise, 7 current and former board members had reached out, subtle acknowledgments that the coup Marcus believed complete was already unraveling. David appeared in the doorway, tie loose, the fatigue of an ER night shift etched into his face. He set a mug of tea beside me. You've been at this all night? Meridian confirmed at 5:23. He read the email, lips tightening into a whistle. Jesus, Bella, you own them now. Not yet, I said, but Marcus feels the ground shifting. David rested a hand on my shoulder. He'd spent his career in crisis. Emergency medicine doesn't allow for hesitation. Do you need me to say it? Say what? That this isn't just brilliant, it's necessary. I looked at him, grateful for the blunt clarity only he could give me. Necessary, I echoed. Oh, A second later, my phone buzzed. Rebecca's voice carried urgency when I answered. Silverstone Financial just called. They've requested an emergency meeting about Marcus's personal guarantees. I smiled despite myself. Someone tipped them off, or someone in compliance made sure they couldn't ignore it, she replied. Either way, they're moving fast. If Marcus can't cover $200 million, they'll seize assets within 48 hours. And he can't cover it, I said flatly, not without fire sales, not without humiliation. Rebecca hesitated, then added, You realize what this means, don't you? You didn't just win. You've forced Marcus into open water with sharks circling. I leaned back in my chair, watching the sun catch on the towers across the park. Good, let them bite. By mid-morning, the financial press had begun sniffing. Unusual share movement at Vertex Capital. Insider stake increases overnight. No names yet, but speculation swirled. The storm was gathering public eyes. Sarah pattered into my office, hair pulled back, Riverside prep uniform crisp. "Mom," she asked softly, "why are people on Twitter saying something's happening at Vertex?" I closed the laptop, forcing my voice calm. "It's nothing you need to worry about." She raised an eyebrow. At 16, she could smell half-truths as easily as perfume. "Right," she said, unconvinced. But she didn't push. She had inherited my instinct for timing. As the door closed behind her, I let out a breath. I had taught her too well that Morgan women handle storms in silence, efficiency, precision. But silence had an expiration date. She deserved to know, someday, that this wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. At 11, Rebecca's paralegal confirmed. Silverstone's credit committee had scheduled an emergency session for 2 p.m. Marcus was already on the defensive. My inbox pinged again, an encrypted message from an anonymous compliance officer. "You're not alone. The SEC has been watching him for months. Do what you have to." The weight of it hit me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. Others had seen the rot. Others had left trails for me to follow. This wasn't a private battle. It was a reckoning. I stood, stretching stiff muscles, and walked to the window. Below, the city buzzed with its usual pulse. Taxis honking, vendors shouting, office workers hurrying with coffee in hand. None of them knew that a single clause buried on page 47 of a forgotten document had shifted the tectonic plates of a financial empire. By tonight, Marcus would know. By tomorrow, the whole city would. The storm had moved from whispers to thunder, and I was ready to walk into it. Thursday dawned heavy and humid, the kind of New York morning that promised storms by afternoon. I dressed with care, not the severe black suit that once marked me as Vertex's risk management machine, but a deep navy dress, tailored to convey authority without aggression. Clothes, like contracts, tell a story. Today, mine said, I no longer sought to belong. I owned a piece of the world they thought was theirs alone. The Vertex Capitol Tower loomed above me as I approached, its mirrored glass facade reflecting a fractured sky. I had walked through those doors thousands of times as an employee. This was my first time entering as its largest shareholder. Inside, the air buzzed. Assistants whispered in tight clusters, senior managers barked into phones, and the executive floor, usually a sanctuary of glass and marble calm, was electric with panic. Word had spread. Someone had triggered a clause that no one remembered, and power was tilting on its axis. Patricia, Marcus's assistant, intercepted me before I reached the boardroom. She looked strained but professional. "Ms. Morgan, Mr. Whitfield would like to see you privately in his office." "Tell him I have 10 minutes, I said. His office was a temple to excess. Italian marble underfoot, mahogany desk that belonged in a museum, art worth millions on the walls. But the man behind the desk was crumbling. Marcus's immaculate hair was unkempt, his $1,000 tie askew, and his hands trembled faintly as he gestured toward a chair. "Isabella," he began, trying for warmth but landing on desperation. "This is all a misunderstanding. The pension suspension, it was never meant to be permanent, just a temporary adjustment while we ride out volatility." "Volatility," I echoed. "Is that what you're calling theft now?" He flinched but pressed on. "Look, I know you're upset. You have every right to be. But this share grab, it'll destroy the firm. Everything we've built." "We?" I laughed, sharp and humorless. "When was it ever we, Marcus? When you took my models and claimed them as your own, when you paid yourself bonuses while cutting pensions. You built an empire on loyalty and greed, and you assumed both were infinite." His face flushed. "This is about page 47, isn't it? My lawyers are already preparing a challenge. No court will uphold such a draconian provision." I pulled out my phone, tapped play. From its speaker spilled Marcus's own voice, recorded in a 2009 board meeting. I've reviewed every page of Amendment 7 personally. Every provision has my full support. Ms. Morgan has crafted exactly what we need to protect the firm's interests going forward." The color drained from his face. "You recorded that?" "I record everything. Risk management. Remember? You taught me that." For the first time in 2 decades, Marcus looked old. His shoulders sagged, his eyes darting toward the window as if searching for escape. "What do you want?" he whispered. "My pension," I said. "The one you tried to erase with a single email. But it's too late for that. What I want now is consequence." Before he could reply, Patricia's voice crackled over the desk intercom. "Mr. Whitfield, Silverstone Financial is here. They say it's urgent." The look on his face told me he finally understood. His empire wasn't just trembling, it was already collapsing. I left him there, drowning in panic, and walked straight to the boardroom. Through the glass walls I could see the directors assembling, some anxious, some resigned, a few already calculating where their loyalties should fall. Elena Rodriguez met my eyes and gave the smallest nod. The doors opened. The lead independent director, Harrison Wells, gestured to me. "Ms. Morgan, please." I remained standing at the head of the room. "As of 5:23 this morning," I became the largest individual shareholder of Vertex Capital. This transfer was executed automatically under Amendment 7, Section 17.32, triggered by the unlawful suspension of my vested pension. Thornton, Marcus's most loyal ally, puffed up like a bullfrog. "This is highly irregular." "What's irregular," I said evenly, "is stealing a contractually guaranteed pension 2 days before payout. The language of the amendment is clear, unambiguous, and self-executing. Marcus signed it. You all ratified it." Before Thornton could bluster again, the boardroom doors burst open. 3 bankers from Silverstone Financial entered, faces grim. "Apologies for the interruption," their leader said, "but we must address Mr. Whitfield immediately regarding his personal guarantees." Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus's face turned a mottled red. "This is a board meeting. You can't—" "Actually," the banker cut him off, "we can. The guarantees you pledged are now callable. $200 million, payable in 48 hours. Chaos erupted. Directors shouted. Lawyers huddled. Marcus sat frozen, his empire crumbling in real time. I waited, letting the storm swirl, then raised my voice. "My proposals are simple," I said. "First, the immediate restoration of all suspended pensions, with 12% interest compounded daily from the date of suspension. Second, the resignation of Marcus Whitfield as CEO, effective immediately. Third, the appointment of Catherine Hayes as interim CEO, with a mandate to conduct a full forensic audit of executive compensation and pension decisions. Fourth, the creation of an employee protection fund seeded with $100 million from the executive bonus pool." Thornton shot to his feet, face purple. "This is extortion." "No," I said coldly. "This is consequence." Elena's voice rang out. "I move to accept Ms. Morgan's proposals." "Seconded," Thomas Washington said without hesitation. The vote was swift and merciless. All in favor but 2. Marcus abstained, his head bowed, Thornton dissenting alone. In less than 15 minutes, the man who had ruled this tower for 2 decades had been stripped of everything. The board adjourned. Silverstone bankers swarmed Marcus, already preparing the seizure of his assets. He stumbled from the room, looking smaller than I had ever seen him, a king stripped naked before his court. Catherine Hayes approached me quietly. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you're competent, because you're ethical, and because you never forgot that this firm exists for its clients and its employees, not just its executives." She straightened, shoulders squared. "I won't let you down." "I know," I said. Outside the boardroom, the news was already breaking. Vertex Capital CEO ousted in shareholder revolt. Hostile takeover by insider. The world had just learned what Marcus had dismissed 15 years ago, that every clause matters, every page matters, and sometimes page 47 can topple an empire. By evening, the marble hallways of Vertex Capital echoed with a different kind of silence, the silence that follows an execution. Marcus's office, once a shrine to his vanity, had been stripped of its aura. The bankers from Silverstone escorted him out, their briefcases fat with documents, their faces blank with professional detachment. The man who had once towered over trading floors now shuffled like a shadow, reduced to begging for time he no longer possessed. News outlets swarmed within hours. Pension scandal rocks Wall Street. CEO ousted in coup by former insider. Tirta twice it some. Sias and the Financial Times, never one to resist irony, ran a headline I clipped and saved: The Patience of Isabella Morgan. But at home, life softened into something unfamiliar. Dinner was not eaten from styrofoam cartons beneath fluorescent lights, but at our own table, where Sarah quizzed me about the day's headlines like an eager law student in training. "So you really planned this for 15 years?" she asked. "I prepared for it," I corrected. "Preparation isn't the same as revenge. It's insurance. You hope you'll never need it. But when disaster comes, you were ready," she finished. A smile tugged at her lips. "That's kind of epic." Her eyes glittered with the same sharpness I'd seen in her as a child, the same gaze that used to cut through my careful reassurances. I wondered then if the true legacy of page 47 wouldn't be the stock certificates or the headlines, but the lesson she'd carry, that dignity isn't given, it's defended. In the weeks that followed, Catherine Hayes proved me right. Pensions were restored, every cent, plus interest. A forensic audit unearthed $73 million siphoned under Marcus's regime. And for the first time in years, Vertex's employees walked the halls with heads unbowed. The press called it the Morgan Clause, and law firms across Wall Street began drafting their own versions, a contagion of accountability spreading through the industry. Marcus, meanwhile, vanished from public life. His Hamptons estate went on the market, his Aspen retreat followed, and the yacht he had christened Invictus was quietly seized by creditors. Months later, the Justice Department announced charges: wire fraud, pension theft, conspiracy. His plea deal traded arrogance for leniency, 6 years in a minimum security facility with parole possible in 4. He sent me a letter before sentencing. The paper trembled with regret, though the handwriting was still bold. "I told you once you'd never sit at the table because I was afraid. Afraid you'd be better at this than me. I was right. I don't hate you. I hate myself." I filed it away, not as sentiment but as evidence, a reminder that even empires collapse from within. The city moved on, as it always does, but my life did not return to its old rhythms. For the first time in 23 years, I woke without an alarm. I dressed not for war, but for walks through Central Park. I read books. I had lunch with David in the middle of a weekday, laughing at the strangeness of freedom. One morning, Sarah burst into the kitchen, Columbia University acceptance letter in hand. "Law," she said, inspired by watching contracts become weapons and shields. "Promise me something, Mom," she said as we toasted her future. "Promise me you'll always read every page." "Especially page 47, I answered, smiling. 6 months later, Vertex thrived under Catherine's reforms. The stock reached record highs, and employees began referring to themselves not as survivors, but as builders. Ethical governance, it turned out, was not just good morality, it was good business. And me, I joined the hospital board where David worked, applying risk management to a different battlefield. Healthcare, finance, different arenas, same principle: protect the vulnerable, plan for contingencies, and never trust appearances. Sometimes at night, I thought about Marcus in his cell, lying awake with nothing but his regrets for company. I felt no triumph in his downfall, only relief that justice for once had teeth. Because in the end, this was never about vengeance. It was about consequence. Every action has one. Every contract tells a story. And every signature, even one buried on page 47, has the power to rewrite an empire.